I was married to a good woman. I would consider her to be a good woman. We got married in 2005. And despite our relatively young ages at that time, I was 16. It's not even relatively young, bro. Stop capping. It was super young. I was 16. She was same age as me. We were both in college. And despite that, she was obedient. She was submissive. She was a good wife for the best part of 10 years. For the better part of a decade, she was a good wife. She had her issues here and there, but then again, who doesn't, whatever. It wasn't until I married again and took a second wife that things started taking a turn for the worse. Now, I can already hear my haters in the comments, especially the women. Oh, well, you took another. It serves you right. You shouldn't have taken another. Shut your mouth, bruv. All right? This is the beauty of Islam, is that it cracks the whip on everyone. I exercised my God-given right, and I had to pay consequences and a price for that as well. And this is another thing, by the way, guys, that you need to understand. If you are going to exercise your God-given right of getting married again, there is a possibility that your current wife and family will leave you. There is that possibility. If you are not prepared to acknowledge that possibility, don't bother going down the route of polygyny in the first place. But you know what? The purpose of this video is not about polygyny or my experience of having multiple wives and so on, although I will touch on that at the end, because I believe I've completely unlocked the game to dealing with women in a polygynous setup, which I now deal with now, alhamdulillah. Beautiful, beautiful arrangement that I have between my wives. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We spend time together, we go out together, we do all sorts together. It's beautiful, but within limits. I'll get to that towards the end of the video. That's not for now. For now, you who is watching me right now, you're watching me because you've lost access to your kid or to your kids. Or you're watching me because you are scared of losing access to your kid or to your kids, as you should be. For the best part of 10 years, my wife was an obedient, submissive, respectful woman to me. I once heard a lecture describing the fitna, the test, the affliction when it comes, and why this particular lecturer was explaining the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where the Prophet ﷺ said, and I'm just paraphrasing that, there can be a man who does good deeds his whole life, and then towards the end of his life, he does one bad deed and he goes to the hellfire, and vice versa as well. A man who done bad all of his life, and then towards the end of his life, he does one good deed and he goes to paradise. Why? How? What's going on there? The affliction or the sickness in the heart is like a virus in a computer that won't show itself or rear its ugly head until you install a heavy piece of software on it. And I'm stealing this directly from this lecturer. Beautiful analogy. So long as you run simple programs, Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, nothing too heavy, the virus won't rear its ugly head. But the moment you try to download a game or something that takes a whole bunch of graphics, that's when you're going to run into problems and issues. For my wife, that piece of software was me taking another woman, taking another wife. Why? Because this woman loved me so much. She saw me as a possession of hers, frankly speaking, if I'm to be perfectly honest with you. Let me just fix this lighting. Hold on. I'll tell you a funny story. One day, she was outside the masjid waiting for me. And one of the other sisters came out of the masjid. And she told this story to my father afterwards, who told me. And as she was waiting for me to come out of the masjid, one of the sisters from inside the masjid, from the sister's side, came out. And she asked the sister, my wife at that time, she asked the sister, she said, there's a fly, bruv, on the light. It's really annoying me. And she said to her, oh, by the way, have you seen my husband at all come out of the masjid? And the sister replied, no, I haven't, sorry. And my wife responds back to her, how do you know what my husband looks like? It was a trap. It was a setup. She just wanted to know if this sister had eyes on her husband, on my wife's at the time husband, me. Just to give you an indication of the level of jealousy that this woman had. Oh my days, bruv. Next level. Like, I can't even begin to describe and explain to you. So just to give you a taste of the nature of the woman. And when I took another wife, so began a tale of woe and tribulation with regards to my estrangement from my kids. Let me just translate to you. Translate that to you in layman's terms. That's when I stopped seeing my kids. Over and over and over. And let me be perfectly honest with you. I was debating in my head before I took this video. I said to myself, how much do I want to talk about? How much do I want to reveal? How much do I want to put on camera? And the reason why is because I feel ashamed. I feel embarrassed. Why do I feel embarrassed, you may be asking? Because I feel like I failed. I feel like I wasn't good enough to make the family stick together in some way, shape, or form. And it feels embarrassing, like a strike on my record, that I have children that I am estranged from. Despite the fact that particularly the younger ones, they really want to see their dad. The older two, the poison has infected their veins. And I would really go into the details of, how bad it is. And I might even go into the details. But I'm just thinking of them, to be honest with you. And, preserving their... Just because I want to talk about things that have happened to me doesn't mean other people want things about them spoken about online as well. However, and if you've been through this, I'm sure you can relate. A child gets to a certain age whereby if you haven't had enough contact with them, number one, and number two, if mum has been injecting poison into their veins, they will begin to hate you. And this, in fact, makes a beautiful segue for me to bring you onto point number one, which is, if you are going through parental estrangement right now, you're going through the courts, you're fighting to see your kids, your woman's breaching court orders, she's not allowing you, or your ex-wife for that matter, girlfriend, whatever, she's not allowing you to see the kids. You're trying, you're doing your best. I need you to understand something. Please, the faster you can accept this, the more level-headed you will be able to think. And that first point is, please, possibly the most important point. You must accept and understand that your children, your blood, your DNA, they will hate you. Your daughter will hate you. Your son will hate you. And I don't use that word lightly. It's not dislike. It's not some type of ambivalent emotion. No, your kids will hate you. And they will hate you for a long period of time. But there is good news. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And I will get to that. But if you can just accept that if you are in this situation where your ex is refusing contact between you and the kids, and you're fighting through the courts, trust and believe your kids are going to side with her, because they see her as the damsel in distress and you as the villain. Why? Because she is constantly speaking ill about you in the house, on the phone, to her mates, all day long. This is only natural. Part of the reason why I was caused so much grief and pain throughout the many years that I was fighting to see my kids, and I'll get to my story of where I'm at with them now in a bit, but part of the reason why I experienced so much pain is because I didn't want this to happen. And I'm not saying you should just lay down and bend over and take it like raw, dry, flipping, no soap bar, nothing. I'm not saying that. I am simply saying there has to be a level of acceptance with the trial that you are going through. When somebody dies, a loved one, your mum, your dad, your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife, they die. There are two ways that you can deal with this grief. Number one, they went too soon. They had so much more life in them. There was so much more to give. It's not fair. Or number two, Alhamdulillah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. From him we came and to him we shall return. الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ راجعون. And they are those, when a trial befalls them, they say, from Allah we came and to him we shall return. A level of acceptance. If you can accept that the likelihood of your children turning on you for many, many years is high, you'll have a lot more peace in your heart moving forward with your life. I fought this for many years. I have so many, one of the things that us as men, we're not very good at is recording events. And one thing that my mum, she advised, she said, each time you try to make contact with them and she refuses contact, you need to write it down. I couldn't be asked with all of that. But my family saw it. My wives saw it. My kids, my other kids saw it. They were witness to it. And the pain it causes you, if you've been through it, you know what I'm talking about. And as a man, you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to express your emotion. One time I remember the pain was so intense, like the grief of not being able to see my children. I remember going into the toilet upstairs. I didn't want my wife and kids to see me. I went into the toilet upstairs. I took a pillow with me. And I just sobbed into the pillow and just like yelled into the pillow. I didn't want anyone to hear me. But if you can accept peacefully that they will hate you for a period of time, it will make it easier for you. Now, listen to me, bro. I know you're sitting there and you're thinking, I don't want my kids to hate me. I got you, bro. I don't want my kids to hate me either. I'm with you. But right now, you don't have any leverage. Right now, you're either fighting in court or you've given up fighting in court, which is the point I reached. But I will tell you this, and I'll get to the conclusion of my story, by the way, because there's more to it. And I will tell you this. You will win in the long run. Something the judge said to me in court, in one of the many times that I've been to court, stuck in my head. And he said to me, young man, one day your kids will grow up and figure out for themselves who the real problem was. Profound. And it brought me a lot of peace. One day your children will grow up and become adults themselves and have a mind of their own and have children of their own. And they will figure out for themselves who the real problem was. They are not stupid. Right now they are young. They've been brainwashed and indoctrinated. But once they grow up, and specifically once they have their own children, it's not just when they grow up. I was listening to Hamza Zors's podcast the other day with Brother Ahmed Raidan, who is the founder of MFSF, which is a support group for fathers to self-represent in court. You know, the average cost of a man representing himself in court when he has been estranged from his children is £15,000. And people say this like, yeah, I'd pay that 15 grand. But most people don't have 15 grand. Most people don't have 15 bags in their bank account right now. The average bank balance of the average person in the UK is a little over £300. Pound! Not £15,000. So let's not try and make it, yeah, they're my kids and it doesn't matter. No, it matters. Because men are putting themselves in dire straits, in debt, to be able to do something that they should have been able to do all along. See their kids. And I hope Brother Ahmed won't mind me relaying the story that I heard from Hamza's podcast, because he's already put it online. But when he went through his situation with his wife, who, by the way, made a false claim and charge against him that he raped his own daughter, 5 years after they separated. They separated in 2010. 5 years later, Ahmed, the founder of MFSF, got married again in 2015. The moment he married again, his wife filed a report to the police that he had raped his daughter. 5 years later, it was pure jealousy. And an attempt to take his home in case the new wife gets it. And she achieved that goal as well. That was the real motive. The story continues. He went through many years of not being able to see his children, and this is what motivated him to found this organization, MFSF, in the first place, because he had to learn himself firsthand how to go about handling and navigating the courts in an effective manner. And one thing he said on that podcast with Hamza Zorsis, and shout out to Hamza, was that between the ages of 14 or 15 to 21 or 22, I don't remember the exact numbers, he hardly saw his son, had hardly any contact, until he met his son again in a hospital. I don't know how or why or the context or the background, but he met him again in a hospital, if I'm not mistaken. And forgive me if I messed up the details, Brother Ahmed, but anyway, he met his son many years later in the hospital. And he said, and when he said this, it brought tears to my eyes, man. He said, I see this young man who's 6'4", and we were like strangers. It was just like another bloke on the street. Your own flesh and blood. Like strangers. That boy used to get dressed when he was a little baby, and used to take him to the park and push him on the swings and down the slide. And you went to the fun fair, and you went to the beach, and you went swimming, and you went biking, and you went hiking, and you went on holiday. Your flesh and blood, you would have caught a bullet with your teeth for him. When you crossed the road, you put your body in the way of traffic just in case you miscalculated, so that lorry would hit you first and hopefully save his life. That boy you once put your body on the line for, he becomes a stranger. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. I promise you. Wallahi, I know this. And that light is when those kids that you have lost access to grow up and have their own kids. That's when they will know and figure out what the time is. That's when they will figure out for themselves who the real problem was. And let me tell you something, especially if you're Muslim. Do not beg and overly apologize and bend the knee to your children. You're setting the wrong frame. This is especially if you're Muslim, because Allah has bestowed upon you a glory and honor as a parent in their eyes. Your children, your child, he needs your pleasure and satisfaction in order to earn the pleasure and satisfaction of Allah, as per the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That the pleasure of the father is the pleasure of Allah, and the displeasure of the father is the displeasure of Allah. You don't need his pleasure to earn the pleasure of Allah. Your child, your son, your daughter, he or she has one father, you. You have at least one child, probably more. Who needs who more? You are the king, and your child is one of your many subjects. You love your subjects. You take care of your subjects. You do your best to ensure the comfort of your subjects, but they are still your subjects. So don't you dare beg and grovel and plead with them. Because when you do this, all you do is reinforce in their minds that you were wrong. When you beg and grovel and plead, all you do is reinforce in the mind of that child that yes, mum was right. Dad is a villain. And unless you truly were, which I doubt you were, because you're watching this right now, then do not beg and plead and grovel with your child. Rather, they should do so with you. Now, after many years of fighting and going through the court system to see my kids, and unfortunately, I had children with a particularly volatile woman, emotionally volatile. She came from a very broken family, family history, lots of criminal activity and broken family home, and dad in and out of prison, mum. I don't want to go into the details, but it was bad. So I was dealing with an emotionally damaged individual whom after she had now been provoked through my getting married again and then our subsequent divorce, she became extremely unpredictable and extremely volatile. So I fought it, as you would naturally do, for many years, through the courts, through trying to arrange, through family, through friends, through all sorts. And we were at her mercy. Sometimes she would allow us to see them, sometimes she wouldn't. Sometimes she'd be very nice, and sometimes she'd just be an absolute nightmare to deal with. And it got to a point where there's only so much pain you can take with this. And I realized that she was using the children as pawns in her little game of power, because she knew the only leverage that she had with me were my children, as all women who play this game know. All women who play this game of stopping you from seeing your kids know that the one soft spot you have is the soft spot for your children. And she will leverage this to the nth degree. She claims to love her kids, and yet at the same time, she's willing to spite and hurt those very children by depriving them of having access to their father. And the harm of this has been well documented. Well documented. Children raised in single mother homes do significantly worse across all metrics, whether it's behavior, whether it's addictions, whether it's completing school and getting kicked out of it. Even homelessness is heavily tied to being raised in a single mother home. And this is not a slight to you single moms who are doing your best and facilitate contact with your ex-husband. If it doesn't apply, let it fly. Don't get upset. I don't want to see you raging in the comments. It's not you. But if it is you, you claim to love your children, and yet you're willing to hurt them. You're willing to drink the poison, hoping that your ex will die. And it got to a point where I no longer had any fight in me anymore. And I said to myself, you know what? You want the kids? Keep them. You don't want me to see them? Fine. And this is going to be very difficult for you to do unless you have one thing. And now this is just a simple quirk of human psychology. And that one thing that you need to be able to effectively execute this is have more children. Now, I know you might be thinking, what? I just messed myself up with one set of kids. Why am I going to mess myself up with another set of kids? I'm not telling you to have children willy-nilly with just anyone. Protect yourself. Be careful what you do. Be aware of the laws that you live in and all the rest of it. But I am saying, have more children. Are your first set of kids replaceable? No, you can never replace your kids. But when you have more of them, the pain of that memory that you had with them is diminished. It's more manageable. Just as if you had 10 income streams and you lose one, you still got 9 income streams left. But if you have one income stream, one job, one paycheck, and you lose that, you're going to be panicking, bruv. Nightmare. Same with kids. If you have just one kid, do you remember the story of Madeleine McCain? The little girl who was kidnapped in Portugal at the age of like 2 or 3. She's never been found to this day. Her parents are still broken to this day. They only had one kid. And I'm not diminishing or taking away from the pain of losing a child under such tragic circumstances. I am not doing that for a minute. I'm just saying, bruv, if you had 19 more kids, it wouldn't be as bad. Parents who suffer the most when they lose a child, whether it's losing them by the child leaving the religion or losing the child by the child dying or whatever the case may be, are parents who had just one kid or maybe 2. Have more children, my friend. Believe me, because it will do 2 things to you. Number 1, it will take your mind off of the pain of having lost access to those children of yours. And number 2, you will be able to focus your energy and fatherly, paternal love that you have on these new children that you have. And number 3, if you do a good job of raising this next set of kids, they will be the ultimate proof and vindication that you are not the villain. If you raise those kids well, this next set of kids, you learn from the mistakes and the lessons that you made before, this next set of kids will be the ultimate proof and vindication that you were not the villain after all. I'm sorry to say it, but I will say it. My eldest son, since I've split, since me and my ex split, we went our separate ways, and she deprived me, suffocated, took the oxygen out of our relationship by just simply not allowing me to see the kids for a number of years. Since that happened, my eldest son, he got kicked out of school. Behavioral issues to the nth degree, and a lot worse than that, which I don't want to get into for his sake. But he was expelled from school. This is not unusual. This is normal. For kids in that situation, in that scenario, and like I said, I really had a conversation with myself today. I was like, how much do I really want to go into, man? But I'm happy to share that, because this is the reality. Now, is it all over for him? Is it doom and gloom? He's kicked out of school, therefore his life is over? No, there's plenty of individuals who didn't make it through school and went on to live very fruitful and successful lives. And if my son is watching now, I say that to him. There is still hope for you. And it all is not lost. You can turn this around. You can pull this around. But that's the side effects of the father not being in the life of the children, because the role of the father is to police the kids before the police do. The role of the father is to police the children before the police do. That's his role. And when the police is not home, dad, friend of mine, he calls himself dad villain. He's dad villain. When the police are not home, there's no law and order. There is nobody to implement law and order, and all hell breaks loose and chaos ensues. So have more children and choose wisely, and I will teach you and I will show you and I will tell you how to pick more wisely when it comes to your women. Believe me, I have experienced the very worst of women, and I currently experience the very best of women. Walillah alhamd. In plural, multiple wives, not just one, multiples. And I experienced the very best, and I appreciate it even more because I experienced the worst. It's that contrast, it's the juxtaposition, it's the night versus day, cold versus warm. It's that contrast that makes it even sweeter and more beautiful. And the lessons that I took from the mistakes I did make with women, I no longer make them anymore. And I wish I could explain to you through this camera lens the beauty of the marriages I have. I wish I could, and I'm going to try and I'm going to attempt to. But that's later on towards the end of this video. It's not right now. The third thing you need to do now is, whilst you are managing your emotions of being separated from your kids, losing access to your children, whether you choose to continue fighting through court or not, is you now need to find a bigger purpose to live for than yourself. And I'm speaking now specifically to the father who is seriously contemplating self-deletion. You know what I'm talking about. You're seriously considering topping yourself. Look at me in the eyes when I talk to you, bro. Look at me. You are needed. If by nobody else on this planet, you are needed by your kids. One day, your son, your daughter, he will come back and she will come back looking for you. She or he will come back looking for answers. They will want to know the truth. They will become adults. They will have families of their own. They will have another perspective. They will mature. They will grow up, and they will be more open and understanding to hearing you. And if you deprive them of that, I promise you, the pain that you think you will end by ending yourself doesn't end. It simply transfers itself onto your kids. So don't do that. Because if nobody else on this planet needs you, they do, even if they don't know it. Even if they don't know it yet, trust and believe, those babies of yours, they need you. So hang in there, because you are needed. Now you need to find a purpose bigger than yourself to live for. Because if you do this, you are able to transfer this pain into rocket fuel. If you've been watching me for a meaningful period of time, you might have heard the analogy that I've used in the past of how pain is like nuclear energy. A nuclear bomb can wipe out an entire city in minutes. Equally, that same nuclear energy can power an entire city with electricity and fuel. Right now, this pain that you feel of having lost access to your children and been separated from them is nuclear. You must decide, do I go left? Do I go right? Do I self-destruct? Or do I power an entire city? This is what I have chosen to do with the content that I create online. This is what Ahmed Raidan has done as a result of having gone through this experience firsthand of having lost access to his kids. And to this day, his son still looks at him like a stranger. That pain is still there. The happy ending hasn't arrived yet, although I know it will come for him. I know without any doubt that once Ahmed's son has sons, he will come back around full circle. There's no doubt in my mind about that, but still the happy ending is not there. And yet, Ahmed has a purpose to live for. Other than worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his worldly purpose after that is to help other dads get back with their kids before the kids get too old. Because they get to a point around teenage years where if you're not back in their life by then, it's done for you. Until they grow up, become adults and have kids of their own, it's done for you. So you need to find a purpose to your pain. Maybe it's in helping other men understand what you went through and the coping mechanisms and creating a video like this right now, like I'm doing. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's something else completely that you're good at. You've got a skill of some sort or a talent. And you pour that pain as motivation into that talent of yours to help others and to be appreciated by others. Because you know what? Life is so much better when you are appreciated by others. When the work you do benefits and helps and is appreciated by others, life is so much better. It's so much more fulfilling and wholesome. You need to find that for yourself. Because once you have that, you're able to direct that pain. And let me tell you something, yeah? When I'm asked, what motivates you? Let me be perfectly honest. Right now, at this stage in my life, and I know it will change, and I'm going to be open now, and I might get rinsed for this at some point, but whatever. But right now, I am fuel. The majority of fuel in my tank is hate. It's straight hate. And it's not hatred for any one particular individual, by the way. I don't hate my ex-wife. Although there is something I will never forgive her for. And I'll get to that afterwards. But I don't hate her. I hate that there are men like me who have had to go through the pain that I went through and are continuing to go through that pain. I hate that. I hate how corrupt the courts are with regards to their support or lack thereof towards fathers in seeing their kids. I hate how those social workers pretend and give you the prance around like they're there to help you. They're not there to help you. They don't give a flying. Half of them don't even have kids themselves. How the hell would you know what I'm going through when you don't even have any kids? You're talking from theory, from a book. You're a nobody. You have no idea what I'm going through. Hate. And I know one day it will change and that energy will transfer into something loftier and so on. But right now, rude boy is hate. And you know what? I love it. Because how are you going to compete with someone who's got that much energy? It's nuclear. It's nuclear. I have just chosen to direct that hatred into positive pursuits, into productive endeavors, into helping other men avoid the traps that I fell into. And you know what? It actually makes the experiences that I've been through worthwhile. I am glad I've been through that. I am glad I lost access to my kids. I am glad I was married to nightmarish women. I'm glad I've been through that. Why? Not because I'm glad for the experience itself, especially of having lost access to my kids. It's heartbreaking. But I am glad that I am now able to help other men navigate those situations. You know how many marriages I've saved and booby traps that they have avoided falling into by the permission of Allah, and anything good from me is from Allah firstly and foremostly. But you know how many times how many men I've helped in that regard? It makes it worthwhile. Your pain will become worthwhile when you find a purpose that you can direct it towards something. You can channel it. You can use it because it needs to be directed. It needs channeling. And if you don't channel it, it will consume you. It will destroy you. Now you might be thinking, all right, fine, I agree, but then what? What's my purpose? I didn't know for the longest time what to do with that pain. I've been going through this pain long before I've been on YouTube, bruv. This has been going on since 2015. So long before YouTube, which I only started 2 years ago, that I've been going through this. But nevertheless, I dedicated myself towards sports, specifically strongman and powerlifting. That was my outlet at that moment in time. It was, okay, you know what? I'm going through this, but I need an outlet. I need something to focus on. I need something to get better at. Now, that was selfish and purely for me, but I was able to create videos and put videos online and tell people how I achieved this and give them instruction on how to do that and how to avoid getting this injury. And people benefited, lo and behold, and it made you feel needed, useful. Like, there's people who appreciate what I'm doing. It's a great feeling. I don't do that anymore now. I found something to be a lot more meaningful and useful, although I still train like a madman. I just don't create videos about it. Start with that. Set a target for yourself. Are you a little bit overweight? All right, get into shape. And really apply yourself. Get a coach. Hire my coach. Get a coach. Have him guide you. Get into the shape of your life. Set a goal over the next 6 to 9 months to get into the shape of your life. Because if nothing else, you'll feel better about yourself. If nothing else, you'll feel so much better about yourself. And when you are feeling better, when you're in shape, when you're healthy, when your body is functioning well, your mind functions well. Let me say that one more time. When your body functions well, your mind functions well. And I cannot emphasize enough how important this is. A broken body, a fat, overweight, obese, heart disease body is a broken, fat, heart disease mind. Get your body straight. And then that will act as a stepping stone for you to move on to the next thing. All right, great. I'm making progress with my body. What else can I make progress on? It becomes an addiction. It becomes an addiction. An addiction to progress, an addiction to improvement, an addiction to micro improvements, to making a little bit of progress in the right direction every single day. You're channeling that pain into something productive. Because if you don't, it will consume you and destroy you. If my eyes are looking away because I've got a bullet point list of things that I'm referring to. Point number 4, and I've already touched upon it, but I'll say it again, is if you've lost access to your kids right now, firstly and foremostly, you want to contact Ahmed with MFSF, who can guide you how to self-represent in court, how to save yourself thousands of pounds, what to say, what not to say, how to play the court system correctly, you need to contact him first, and I'll put all of his links in the description. After that, if you do go through this court system or you don't go through this court system, if you do fight it or you don't fight it, regardless, I need you to know that one day your kids will come back to you. I promise. So long as you continue to conduct yourself in a dignified manner, be dignified, not vengeful, and this is hard. And I mentioned earlier, there is one thing that I would never forgive my ex-wife for, and I'll tell you what that is. Do I hate her? No, I feel nothing towards her, actually. And maybe that's even worse, because when you hate someone, it's an indication that there is an emotion towards them. I don't hate her. I don't like her, dislike her, nothing. I just empty. But one thing I will not forgive her for is the time I lost with my kids. My eldest son, a few years back now, before COVID this is, went for another period of parental estrangement, not allowed to see the kids, despite there being a court order, blah, blah, blah. The next time I saw him, he went from being a kid with a kid voice to being 6'1" with a man's voice. I didn't recognize him. His voice, the baritone in his voice, it was like shocking. And that is the one thing I will never forgive her for. Time. Because space we can recover. Time, never. Saying by Napoleon Bonaparte. No matter what happens, no matter how many apologies come my way, no matter how much time I spend with my kids when they grow older, I will never get those childhood years back. And that is one thing I will never forgive her for. But it doesn't cause me to be hateful or resentful. It just gives me more fuel for my passion, for the work that I do online, for the information that I'm sharing with you right now. And just know, to continue with point number 4, that those kids, one day, they will come back to you. It's not going to be soon. It's not going to be anytime close. I had a friend that I grew up with. My friend, I was about to say his name. I'm not going to say his name. Let's say that his name was Hassan, because that's not his name. But for the purpose of this video, his name's Hassan. Hassan was brutalized by his dad growing up. When I say brutalized, I mean brutalized, bruv. I can't even begin to start. Fully brutalized. Canes and belts and bro, it was like he was in prison, bruv. Like he was being beaten up by prison guards. It was like that. And he had a terrible relationship with his father, and he eventually ran away from home, and it was just a nightmare, bruv. I spoke to him 3 years ago. He had two kids of his own, 2 sons of his own. And he was 36 years old at the time. And he said to me, you know what, Mahdi? I kind of understand why my dad was the way he was with me. SubhanAllah. And we were in his dad's house at that time, and he was laughing and smiling with his dad like they were best mates. Now, there is no excuse for what his dad did to him. I'll be honest with you, bruv. His dad was a flipping psycho. Nuts, bonkers. But even then, even with how far his dad went, still his son came right back around once he had his own kids. Now, he was in his 30s, and that took time. And his dad really was a criminal. He really was a villain. And still he came around. So what do you think about you? You've done your best. You're not a villain. You're not a criminal. You're not trying to oppress anyone. You just want to see your kids. Believe me, they're going to come back around faster than my guy Hassan did to his dad. But it will take time. And most probably, it will require them to have their own children first. But they will come back. Just for now, rewind the previous steps of what to do in the interim until then. You know the ultimate vindication for me right now? The ultimate vindication for me right now. One of my wives, she's a widow. And the father of the children, the orphan children that I live with, he died, Allah yarhamu, 10 years ago, something along those lines. And I've been in these kids' lives since they were young, year 5, year 6. And the older two in particular, Allahumma barik lahum. And firstly and foremostly, the guidance is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and any good from me is from Allah. But the older two have blossomed into righteous, practicing Muslims. They're 15 and 17 alike. They cover head to toe in the appropriate manner. They pray 5 times a day. One of them's close to completing the Quran in the month of Ramadan right now. They are the ultimate vindication and proof for my paternal abilities or lack thereof. In the home where I am raising children, we have, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, righteous Muslims and Muslimas being raised, excelling in school, doing well in their studies and in their religion. And whilst in the home with the kids that I have been estranged from, the kid's been kicked out of school and the other one I don't know what, and so on. It's the ultimate proof and vindication and validation. That's why I have so much confidence in my, not just in my husband abilities, but in my parental abilities, because I have receipts. I have proof. I have 3 more younger kids of my own as well. My family see the receipts for themselves. My friends see the receipts for themselves. So unless you're like Hassan's dad and you really are a villain, you've got nothing to worry about. Rewind this video, have a look at the first couple of steps, especially the one where I said you need to move on and have more children, and let that be the ultimate proof and vindication for your fatherly abilities, for your paternal abilities. And posterity will have the last laugh, my friend. The future will have the last laugh. The future will look back on the now and you will be vindicated. And the real criminal will be exposed in all their naked lack of glory. And that brings me on to the final point, which is the light at the end of the tunnel. And I touched upon it earlier. After having been through some really negative experiences with regards to marriage and dealing with women, I now have the most beautiful marriages you could possibly imagine. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. And anything good that I experience is from Allah firstly and foremostly. And I'm not claiming that for myself. I'm not. I really want to humble myself and remind myself, because as quickly as it can be given, it can be taken away. But I had to learn lessons along the way. I have multiple wives right now. They love me. They respect me. When they greet me, they kiss my hand. When my children greet me, the kids that I have that I live with, they kiss my hand, all of them. When I give them a look, silence falls in the house. My wife, it could be 2 in the morning. Just the other day, I came home at 2 in the morning because I trained after Taraweeh. I went straight to the gym. I really couldn't be asked to fix my own food. I won't be honest with you, bruv. It was all long. The rice was in this thing, and then I was like, you know what? I don't want to disturb my wife. But forget that, bruv. I went into the bedroom. I said to her, sweetheart, can you put some food on for me? 2 in the morning. She got up for me. She put the food on for me. She sat with me. She fed me. She watered me. No complaints. Smile on her face. She'll sleep deprived the next morning. My wives, we go out together. We have dinners together. We spend time together. I used to think this was impossible. I used to think this is a myth. This can't happen. The myth was my limiting beliefs. The myth was I had not understood how to deal with women correctly. And you know, the one resource that has helped me deal with women the most and the best, has helped me to get the best out of my marriages with women. And if you've been following me on Instagram, then you will see from my stories how many sisters, again, I'm not trying to boast or anything, but you know how many women are trying to marry me, bruv. If you've been watching my stories on Instagram, then you will know from the anonymous confessions. And in my inbox, my DM is just next level, bruv. And I'm the guy who talks openly about having multiple wives. I'm the guy who, when I'm asked, do you love all your wives equally? I say, no. How can he say this? It's going to hurt them. It's going to upset them. You don't understand power. You don't understand power. And the one resource that has helped me the most in refining my interactions with women is the book, The 48 Laws of Power. I have read that book over and 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 over. If you want to know how many times I read that, rewind this last 20 seconds and count how many times I said over. That's how many times I've read that book, cover to cover, taking notes. You might think, what does the 48 Laws of Power have to do with a Muslim man dealing with his Muslim wives? Everything. First of all, remove the term Muslim. It's about relationship dynamics. It's about understanding human influence and how to get the best out of people. It is the reason why in my private community, and I'll put a link in the description for my private men's community, why I've removed all of the 48 Laws of Power series that I did on YouTube. It's now private. You can only access it on my private community. And each month I will be covering a new law. Why? Because that one book has improved my interactions with women more than any other book that I've read. Understanding power dynamics, understanding human influence, understanding how to get the best out of someone, and in this instance, women. It's not just women, by the way, but in this particular scenario, women. Now, you can either read that book over and over and over and over as many times as I did, or you can join me in my men's private community and I'll give you the cream of what I have learned. If you don't want to do that, then fine, whatever. I don't give a damn, bro. Buy the book, read the book. You don't even need to buy the book. Type it on YouTube right now. There's an audio book right now. The first time you read it, it's going to fly over your head. It's too heavy. It's too heavy. There's too much material in there. But if you can get a grasp on human influence, another excellent book that I've read, which didn't really help my dealings with women, but helped me to understand more human influence, is a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini. Read that book. Read The Passion Trap. Understand, why does a woman start to pull away all of a sudden? Why is it when she pulls away and you try to buy her gifts and lavish her with expensive holidays that she pulls away even more? Why is that? Understanding human influence, understanding power dynamics, understanding why women are the way they are. Women are like your shadow. You ever tried to catch your shadow? It keeps evading you. But what happens the moment you turn your back on the shadow? It has no choice but to follow you. It has no choice but to follow you. And that one book has been the most helpful resource in my understanding of female nature. And it's the reason why I cover it in my private community. More than anything though, if you're a man who's lost access to his children right now, you need to find a purpose for your pain. Do your best to re-establish communication with those kids, because you have a limited period of time to do it. If they become young adults and you haven't done it by then, you can kiss bye-bye to them until they have their own kids and grow up. And that's why I can't speak highly enough of Brother Ahmed Raidan. And again, I will put his links in the description. He has not asked me to do this. He does not know I've made this video. I'm doing this of my own accord. If you found this useful, then please share it. If you're a father who's going through this right now, share this with another father who's going through this right now, having lost access to his kids. Put it on your groups, put it wherever. Because I'm sure there's someone else out there who could benefit from it too.